I have avoided making this video for months now.
I'm pulling a barv!
I'm not trying to hate on the creators. I love the franchise up until this point, so I am not trying to ride the wave of picking on Veilguard. Obviously, it's why I'm making the video now. But my experience of Veilguard as a longtime fan of the series and as a medievalist who studies literature, I hated it. It was bad. It was bad. It wasn't just a dip in quality. Dragon Age 2 was a dip in quality. Parts of Inquisition were a dip in quality. Some parts I actually very much enjoyed. Veilguard was bad. It honestly doesn't even register as a Dragon Age game. And I don't just say that because I didn't like it. That too. But I think it lost its way. And that's what this video is going to be about. So I'm going to rant to you right now about why Veilguard failed. And Veilguard failed, I'm telling you, this is the reason, is because it stopped being sufficiently medieval. Here's what I mean. Yes, obviously medieval fantasy gets to play fast and loose with whether or not it's taking up medieval stuff. Yes, even Origins was not, one-to-one exactly historically medieval. That's not the point that I'm making. What I'm saying is that there was an embrace at the beginning of the series, the whole Dragon Age series, there was an embrace of medieval fantasy aesthetics and narrative tropes and degrees of violence and political machinations and all that, I don't even know if I would say over the course of the series, it really is most noticeably different in Veilguard. A big dip in medieval stuff. Veilguard did not want to be medieval because Veilguard did not want to be Dragon Age and part of the Dragon Age series. Take, for example, some of the costumes or, character designs and what they were wearing. I was really struck when I encountered Lucanis, when I encountered Emmerich. They had very, let's say, not medieval styles, much later in some cases. This is with a variety of characters. You would look at them and you would think, oh, that's something I might see, I don't know, like out of a Hot Topic, in 2007, not something that's like medieval. And that's just the costuming. You can think also the departure from a real desire to see violence. Blood. Political strife and discord and machinations, as I said earlier.
Tonight, you and I are both concerned by the actions of a certain person. Come, dance with me. Spies will not hear us on the dance floor.
Very well. Shall we dance, Your Grace?
I'd be delighted.
There was no gore in this game, to my memory.
Got here fast enough.
They got the guards at their back.
The persistent gore was a feature of the previous games, and there wasn't here. Why do I say that's medieval? Because fighting and violence was not sanitary in this period. I'm not saying that everybody was killing each other all the time, but you did not have, clean magic energy launching from one place to another, basically as a gun substitute. This was a violent time, this was a bloody time. Things were going to get violent. And Veilguard didn't want to see that. And the fake friendliness between everybody.
Who's that helping?
Who's what helping?
Feeling guilty.
What? Tell the rock what to do?
Sort of.
It's not a dog.
Yeah, but just try it.
In the first game, you had these different factions who had their own realistic interests and they needed help, and they were not going to help you because you were a stranger. The only thing that obligated them to help were these old treaties that had been signed, which I think, as somebody who's interested in manuscript and book cultures, that's very cool. But setting that aside, In Veilguard, everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, we're all gonna work together because teamwork makes the dream work, and we have to defeat Elgernon and Gillenane and fight Elgernon and Gillenane. They say the names over and over again. The friendship aspect, not just within the team, but within every conceivable person who was on your side, and everybody was on your side in the game, it meant that the political differences, the regional and geographic differences didn't seem to mean a whole lot anymore in this game.
We found the gods before.
Not without help, we didn't.
So we get help again. We've got allies everywhere now.
And you know what else doesn't mean anything anymore in the Dragon Age series? The intricate religions that the game developers had built up over the course of, 3 games, and now it's just like nobody cares. You get to be a happy little universalist, everybody's right and all the religions are equal. The different religions and the different cultures that were in the game were huge causes of strife and discord. It's this Catholic analog that they have, Andrastianism. Andraste is this Christ-like figure, or really kind of like a Muhammad-like figure, because she's not divine per se. She's kind of brought to the Maker's side when she's martyred, but she is this savior-like figure. The church gets built up around her. It's the reason that all the priestesses are women, and the church is also in control of the mages. You don't hardly hear at all about Andrastianism in Veilguard. And the religion does exist in the new region that you're in. We hear about it in multiple games, I believe. Nobody cares anymore. It's just the religion that was the cause of this huge inquisition. It's just the religion that was the cause of this kind of holy war on the elves a long time back, and now it's the elvish religion. These elven gods seem to be coming up. So what are the implications of that? Does that mean that Andrastianism, this whole thing, is not true? The game doesn't care. I think you spend about 2 minutes thinking about it in the entire game, with the conclusion that, oh, well, maybe everybody's kind of right, or maybe they are gods and maybe they're not, and, doesn't it just matter that we're all friends and that we all have fun?
There they are, the elven creators. I used to be jealous of the Dalish elves, because they got to learn all these stories I only barely knew. Now I get to see the truth of it, and it turns out the truth is awful.
Awful is an understatement. I wish they were monsters. Something grand and terrible. Seeing them like that, they're no better than Tevinter nobles.
But no worse, either. They were people, and people can let you down.
All right.
I was livid as somebody who loves to play a religious zealot in role-playing games whenever I can. I was livid when you built up this whole mythos, whether or not you wanted to commit to that religion as a player, to get to that point in Veilguard where you finally get to ask, hey, does the existence of these gods mean that this one religion isn't true? Or even, the elvish religion, this pantheon, were they wrong the entire time? Or, are their gods actually really evil and wicked and they were worshiping them as good, deities? No, oh well, nobody cares. You can just believe whatever you want to. The laziness and the disrespect to your own lore. And so an issue with dropping your religions in your game, aside from just losing this rich mythos and having a medieval fantasy series where religion doesn't matter, which is laughable. Another thing too is that your sense of right and wrong in the game is very clearly guided by whatever the developers thought was right and wrong. You don't get to be mean to people, not really. You get to be mean to the bad guys, but even the bad guys are probably just misunderstood. I remember once I was like joking around with Emmerich. I think I had like teased him about something and he was being very serious about it, and so I chose the dialogue option to be funny. He didn't like it, and my character immediately, without me prompting it, without me wanting to do it, my character was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then we moved on. And I'm like, I want to be myself, which means I want to be mean. And I didn't get that in this game. What I got was a very HR friendly, I think somebody called it a friendship simulator, and I totally agree.
So go help Rook. Support them. Solve those problems. And maybe start with Davrin and Lucanus. Or even Nev. She's taking Minrathous hard.
And the gods?
You've asked the Wardens to track them through the Darkspawn. That'll take time.
I should use that time to check in with the team. And then, I should go talk with Solus.
You get to be nice in the way that means that you are codependent and take on everybody else's problems. But as long as they decide what is right for them, because there are no objective moral standards. You know, you have Emmerich, like I mentioned, he does magic with dead people. He's a necromancer. That would have been a problem in previous games, but now, it's just like, oh, weird, funny, a little bit off, but okay. You have an assassin, Lucanus, who's also possessed by a demon, which in previous games, being possessed by a demon was something that got you killed instantly by the nearest thinking person who was able to wield the sword, because that was considered a very dangerous thing. Being assassin was also considered bad. You have somebody in the first game who has, at best, very questionable morals, and he was a former assassin, right? In this game, it's like, oh, the assassins are nice, and they're really the ones who are helping out the city, and they're actually the good guys. They're just kind of grassroots, helpful organization. They kill people who deserve it, like everybody does. And, him being possessed by a demon, why are you being so picky? Like, it's okay. It's not like a bad demon. It's just like a kind of annoying demon, like why would you even be bothered about that? Like he talks at the end of the game about like how he's gonna come to peace with strife. That's the name of the demon, I think, or whatever. Bitterness, resentment is really a better name for him, but anyway, he's gonna come to peace with being possessed by a demon, and you're supposed to be like, that's so good for you. I can't. Who cleared the writing? These are not medieval a medieval fantasy game is not okay with demon possession. You kill the demons. They're evil. It's not okay with questionable magic that, works with people's blood or corpses. Like, that's in a world that you've built in which there is a real sense of justice and righteousness and morality that's objective, and that changes depending on the religion and the culture, but still, within those cultures and religions, these standards, these ethical standards matter. These higher things that people are thinking about matter. No, there is no objective truth that we're going to hold anybody to. There's no objective ethical standard. Your truth is your truth, and my job in playing this game that I paid $70 for. My job in playing this game is to help you, my virtual friend, realize your full potential in doing whatever makes you feel good. If that's doing stuff with corpses, if that's killing people with your demon possession, if that's oh my gosh, yes, let's talk about the non-binary character.
I'm from Ravain. Not like I follow the Cune.
You've got the arm ropes.
Sure. I wear a lot of stuff. You don't get to tell me who I am.
So here's my problem with Tosh. I have many problems with Tosh. One fun fact, actually, is that the game refers to her as, her and she, even after you've gone through this whole non-binary self-discovery cycle with Tosh. I mean, if Tosh dies at the end, Isabella still refers to Tosh as she, her. So we're clear. But Tosh, what Tosh represents, beyond the character herself, is a nonsense rewrite and a spitting upon a really interesting and intricately built mythos culture in the Kunari. The Kunari are this big faction. They have the Kun, which is a set of written texts that they hold to. It's extremely rigid. They are either planning to invade or are actively invading or fighting different countries at their borders. Their goal is expansion and conversion, okay? They have a lot in common with the Ottoman Empire, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Tosh comes in, and now she's explaining, well, no, the Kun is, it's actually, the Kun is not bad, it's the people who are misappropriating it, it's these fringe extremists who are doing it. It's not fringe extremists, honey, it's the entire government. It's the entire government that's been invading people for years now, so this is, it's gaslighting. It's gaslighting. It's the game writers and developers telling you, no, you don't remember everything that happened in those previous 3 games, or everything you do know is wrong, what you heard from the mouths of actual Kunari people across all these different places and this whole, huge numbers of people. No, that was all wrong, and your memory is just bad, and maybe you're crazy, like maybe you just forgot. Or maybe you just didn't hear it right the first time, because no, the Kunari are actually good, and they're just misunderstood people. Everyone's misunderstood in this game, and except for the bad guys, but even then, they're kind of also misunderstood. What Tosh represents is this larger effort to force down your throat a new lore and a new mythos without building it up, without the effort of showing you, let's say, the actual homeland or a diversity of people. It's just about telling you that, no, actually your memory is bad, and I'm actually telling you what's right about this. And what's right is that the Kunari are unequivocally good, and why are you doubting that? It's kind of weird, actually. Now, what does this have to do with the game not being sufficiently medieval? Long story short, and I keep coming back to this, when you are avoiding participating or having your characters participate in these historic cultures that have their own languages and religions and expectations, manners of dress, manners of combat, all these different organizational principles, ethics, that when you got all these people together from these different places and cultures, there could be a lot of friction. When you lose all these different things, you are creating a world in which difference doesn't really matter. It's very cosmopolitan. It's very, standardized ethics don't really matter. It's very sanitized. It's a largely conflict-free world where something literally has to come from the beyond, like from the veil, to invade it in order for things to be bad. Except for, some of the Teventer slavers, we decided that they're bad too. And the reason that this doesn't really jive with a medieval set of aesthetics and tropes, let's say narrative tropes, or even just medieval history and how that gets adapted into fantasy, none of this is medieval because different cultures don't seem to matter. Different territories don't seem to matter. Different people don't seem to matter because everybody's fundamentally the same. Or nobody's really the same, but everybody's truth is equally important. And so they're all kind of the same in that way. It's not medieval because it's not honest to how difficult life can be to navigate conflict between different people groups. And I'm not saying that in the Middle Ages everybody was super isolationist and nobody ever met each other until, Age of Expansion, long 18th century, or colonialism of various kinds. It's not true. You would have people of color in places like medieval England. Would it look like Queens today? No. But it wasn't like, oh, if I spot a black person walking around, then that's just DEI and it's not honest. No, you would have you would see that in the Middle Ages, but again, not to an exorbitant degree. Not, it shouldn't look like, again, like Queens today. So my issue with Dragon Age Veilguard was not that it wanted to have some modernized aesthetics. You know, the other games had a little bit of that. You had women fighting. You could play as a woman fighting. You would see lots of female soldiers, all right? That was in the previous games. We've already departed from medieval historical reality. I understand that. The problem, though, is that the game lost its own sense of internal politics and religious priorities, ethics, even just the idea that there were good guys and bad guys, that there would be, you know, people who are evil or forces that were evil and some forces that were good. The game really didn't seem comfortable with making villains out of people, except for, weirdly, the Tevinter Imperium and the slavers. Now, don't get me wrong, the reason I say that that was weird that they took issue with that is because in previous games, you understand that slavery in the Tevinter Imperium, and you can hear it in the words Tevinter Imperium, slavery is supposed to look like it was in the Roman Empire, something much more akin to, let's say, an indentured servitude than chattel slavery. And yet there's a kind of, it's gonna sound mean, but a historical ignorance when you hear the term slavery and you think, okay, it always looked like what I know as a probably white person in the Western world today, and I think of chattel slavery, and so that must be how we depict it going on, even though in previous games they had actually kind of debated the ethics of slavery. I remember Dorian had talked about this. He had defended the practice of slavery when you're playing the third game, if you talk to him.
In the south, you have alienages, slums, both human and elven. The desperate have no way out. Back home, a poor man can sell himself. As a slave, he could have a position of respect, comfort, and could even support a family. Some slaves are treated poorly, it's true. But do you honestly think inescapable poverty is better?
Is that what you call it? Treated poorly?
Abuse heaped upon those without power isn't limited to Tevinter, my friend.
So the game is largely uncomfortable with a lot of its own world and universe. And I think, spoiler, that's exactly why at the end you learn that the entire bottom half of the map of the Dragon Age universe has just been entirely nuked. I think that was the perfect encapsulation of the game's hatred of itself and its own story and its own ethics and its own world. You know, just burn it all down. I couldn't believe it when I read that was basically going on, and yet I absolutely could, because I had been watching this game implode, not just its own self, but the entire Dragon Age universe. That by the time I got to the end, I was grateful the game was done. I do feel sad that it seems like that series will not continue. That's not an official announcement from anybody. I'm just saying that it's hard to imagine how the game moves forward after nuking itself. But even if they hadn't literally set the entire bottom half of the map on fire, presumably in order to avoid having to follow through on any major decisions that had happened in the previous games. But even if they hadn't done that, it's hard to see a game hate itself and its own mythos so much and imagine what it might look like in the future. It's hard to imagine a future when it seems like the developers resented its own past. So anyway, the lack of medieval stuff in the game, I think, yeah, stylistically, it's annoying, it's sad, it's not what we want to see out of the Dragon Age games, but more importantly, all this absent medieval stuff I think was really indicative of the game's disdain for its own past. You know, a disdain maybe for the medieval past, actually, I don't know, but certainly for its own past. Maybe because it's too much work to translate all those decisions from previous games into the next one, and what are the implications of it. I'm sure that's a lot of work. But it seems more like there was a a resentment of the culture and the ethics that had been established. And what better way to axe all of that than to just bring us out of the Middle Ages, you know, bring us into a modern period, a more modern looking world. And obviously that wasn't successful. It wasn't resonant with players, it wasn't resonant with me, but I don't think you need to be a medievalist in order to notice a shift in tone, in aesthetics, in priorities. And it seems like people did notice, because there's no DLC planned, and it's really hard to imagine a future for this game. Like, for this franchise, I mean. Devastating. Anyway, makes me want to go back and play Wardens again. Alright, rant over. Thank you for watching. Maybe I'll actually go into depth about the good games. Funnily enough, I had planned an entire either series or at least a big video on the Dragon Age universe and how it engaged the Middle Ages, and especially medieval romance. I was so stoked to do that, and then I played Veilguard, and I couldn't even think about Dragon Age for like, when did I finished it at the beginning of December. I couldn't think about it until now, so maybe I'll look into it, but the game left such a poor taste in my mouth that, but I played it and I bought the game, so thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.